Welcome to the TalView podcast, where AI meets expertise. Join us as we explore the future of interviewing and proctoring.
Hello, welcome to today's webinar, Reducing Exam Stress, AI Agents versus Human Proctoring. My name's Eleanor and I manage the events here at RM. I'd like to thank our friends at TalView for hosting this session today. It's nice to be joined by a mixed audience from around the globe, and I'd be interested to know where you're all joining us from today. So if you can find that Q&A box at the bottom of the screen, and just drop in where you're from. It'd be nice to hear from you. That Q&A box is a great place for you to interact with us. So if you have any questions at any point, or you want to make any comments, just pop it in there and I'll be able to see it and share it with the speakers. We'll cover any questions at the end of the session, so do keep those coming. And any that we can't answer live in the session, we'll follow up with you about afterwards. Just a bit of housekeeping. The session will be recorded and a link will be sent out for you to watch again later or share. So just before I introduce our speakers, it's probably a good idea to give you a better view of how TalView and RM work together. So RM Assessment is one of the largest and most experienced providers of assessment solutions in the market. We're a trusted partner to qualification providers around the globe. And RM are constantly developing and innovating our own assessment platforms to meet the needs of candidates, both now and in the future. But we also partner with trusted suppliers to create end-to-end solutions. So TalView stood out to us as being a number one proctoring service who dealt with multi-geography deployments. And we've worked alongside TalView with some of our biggest customers, such as Cambridge University Press and Assessment. And really, we're talking to them today because their latest innovation in the AI proctoring space immediately caught our attention and we wanted to talk to them a little bit more about it. So I'm pleased to be joined today by Sanjojo Jose, who's the CEO of TalView, and also Anna Hinchliffe, who's our Senior Proposition Manager at RM. Any of you with a keen eye will have spotted that we had our solutions consultant Anoop joining us today, but due to unforeseen circumstances, he's just had to step out, and kindly Anna has joined us at the last minute. So if both of you want to give us a bit of an intro to who you are and why you wanted to do this webinar today, Anna, can I start with you?
You surely can. Thank you, Eleanor. So yes, I'm not Anoop. As a senior proposition manager at RM, my role is to understand customer strategies, their challenges, and then to act as the voice of our customers to enable RM to bring the right solutions to the market at the right time. So I was really keen to get involved in this webinar today. And probably fair to say AI proctoring is quite new to me. So I've got quite a lot of questions that I know our customers are going to be asking us about. And so hopefully we'll bring them on that journey with us. So I hope you're ready, Sanjo. I've got plenty of questions for you.
I hope I am. Nice to meet you. And I'm Sanjo. I'm one of the co-founders and also the CEO of TalView. I've been in the larger skill measurement, skill management space for a couple of decades. TalView is an organization which I co-founded back in 2017, and since then have been also the chief executive officer for TalView, where my focus is driving both product strategy and building the business. And we've been fortunate to partner with a lot of great customers across the globe. Today, we work with around 200 plus leading universities, large certification providers, and other organizations, and also partner with wonderful partners like RM. So really looking forward to the conversation today.
Poll, Eleanor?
Yeah, so we've just got a quick poll that we wanted to start. So if you can get that poll running for us, we do have people in the background helping us out with this. So if we can get that poll running. So we have, we were trying to find out what it was that you were hoping to find out more about today. Kind of how AI proctoring can support your global growth, where it can lower your costs, what this means to your human proctoring solutions, what effect it will have on your candidate experience, or maybe something else. So I can see lots of things coming in for kind of those choices there. And if it was something else, just drop it in that Q&A box so we can make sure that we're covering it as we go further into that content. So just while people are doing that, should we give Sanjay, you have some slides for this, don't you? Should we just give a brief introduction to some of the areas that we're going to cover today? Are you okay to share those slides?
Yeah, I am sharing it now. Can you all see my screen?
It's coming through, it looks like.
I've always found that while we can talk, but having slides helps with a lot of listeners also are visual learners. So slides always help to add to the effectiveness of the conversation.
Okay, so I think we're just on the on one of the intro slides that's got the 6 boxes on it that just go over kind of the main areas of candidate stress. There we go, that's the one.
Great. So I think there have been a lot of conversations about candidate stress from the very beginning of remote proctoring, or I think probably from the beginning of when exams were invented for the first time. But I think remote proctoring definitely has been one of those areas where because it's new and it's a change from how test takers have traditionally taken exams. It has always been a key point of discussion, and there are multiple factors contributing to that. The first one being the lack of familiarity with the online exam format for many test takers when they're used to doing exams on computers at a center, but all of a sudden when you're first encountering your first online exam, the concerns range from, oh, if something goes wrong, how will I get support? What will happen to my exam results if I'm not able to complete the exam on time because of some of the technical issues or things like that? So that is like a key part of the cause of stress when it comes to exams. The other aspect is proctors. Oftentimes, proctors are from a different culture or from a different part of the world, and oftentimes when you have these remote proctored exams, you sometimes have difficulty understanding the proctor. Sometimes the proctor you're worried about whether the proctor is trained enough for you for them to assist you effectively. Those kind of aspects, especially if you had a bad experience with the proctor who did not follow the rules the way they were expected to follow, or the communication or their consistency in proctoring was not up to the mark. That also adds to you if you have not already taken an exam in remote proctoring environment, if you've heard those stories from your friends or in online forums, that adds to the stress when you're looking forward to an online proctored exam. The fact that you are being continuously monitored, especially through the webcam, often by a stranger in a environment which is your home or your office or wherever, that also often adds to the stress. We've seen a lot of candidates being worried about the intrusive nature of remote proctoring. And then lastly, there are AI programs which run on top of the proctoring models, which sometimes, especially if the AI models are more primitive, can lead to a lot of false positives. Like you, in the process of taking an exam, you've moved out of the test, the camera feed as you're thinking or you're fidgeting because you're a little nervous, and it suddenly pops up a warning saying that, hey, you need to stay in front of the camera, or other such false positives which do occur once in a while, especially with remote proctoring. That also adds to the stress because exams are themselves a stressful environment. But if you have false positives, it would increase your worry about, okay, well, am I being impacted by that flag? Will my test results get impacted by that? So these are all, I think, things which we have seen that often contribute to the exam stress, especially in an online exam with remote proctoring format.
Okay. So if I just share the results of that poll. So we can see that most people today, and brilliant, 'cause this is exactly what we wanted to talk about as well, are really interested in the effect that the AI proctoring will have on the candidate experience. So I'm really glad to see in the call today people are kind of really caring about that candidate experience, what this means for them, what it looks like, what it feels like. We do still have people very keen to hear about what it means for the human proctoring solution, but also in terms of the organisation, what it means for global growth and lowering costs. So I'm hoping we're going to cover all of those points today. And we did have another point that came into the Q&A that talks about if students argue against a decision, how often are they able to raise a reasonable doubt? And we are going to cover that a little bit later in the session, and we can look at that question when we get to the end as well to cover anything that you think that we've missed. So if we don't cover that quite the way that you hope to get the answer, then do just drop another question in the box and we'll get to it at the end. So Anna, back to you.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, I've jotted a few of those down. So let's try and cover as many as we can in this session. So I'd love to get a brief overview of how you came to build this AI proctor and how proctoring has evolved over the years.
Yeah, I do have a slide. So as you all know, we have had exams in a classroom environment with supervisors or proctors from the very beginning. But then, since then, we have had different stages of evolution from a proctoring standpoint. The first was where you just moved the exams online and had human proctors monitoring the exams from a remote location, often using tools like Zoom or a Google video or any of that. So that was probably the first mode of remote proctoring which we had in the industry. Then we also started using recorded proctoring, which essentially means you don't have a human on the other side. You are taking the exam on your own, but while you're taking the exam, your video, your audio, sometimes your screen feed is getting recorded, and then you have a post-session review done by human proctors, which essentially was used to validate whether the exam results are qualified or there are any violations. And then we had the advent of automated proctoring, which is essentially, in simple language, a software which basically can detect for specific events or specific infractions, like what a human proctor would do. So, for example, you would have somebody in the software looking for if the person is in front of the camera, if it's a closed book exam, they're not supposed to use a book. Are they bringing a book or a paper into the test environment? It can look for if there are multiple people in the room, and then asking the test taker is asking for help from those other individuals in the room. Those are all the basic checks which automated proctoring could do, but the limitations were that, and we'll talk more about it later, but the limitations were that it can only look at a specific set of events and not cover all the areas of test violations. And more importantly, with these kind of automated proctoring or even record and review, proctoring is not just about monitoring the test taker, but it's also about giving them assistance. When they're doing an exam online, there might be aspects where they need help. They might get stuck in one particular step and they might need some assistance, whether it's a technology related aspect or whether it's something to do with the questions, any of that. So that support was not there. And that's where really AI proctoring agents come into picture, which is the latest innovation in the space. And Talvi is very proud to be the first one to launch an AI proctoring agent. We believe that this is going to be the future of how proctoring is going to evolve. And we can talk more about this in detail, but essentially AI proctoring combines the best aspects of human proctoring and automated proctoring to create a test taker experience which is best in class. So that's really what it boils down to. So let me talk a little more about what an AI agent is, because this has been something which lot of other industries have already seen success with. We are all familiar with the in a space of customer service, and we have all kind of had very bad experiences with bots in the customer success or customer service world, where you have either had to interact with chatbots which were basically broken, where they can only respond to predefined set of questions, and if you have a question which is not defined previously, then you would not get a response, and then you'll have to wait for a human agent to come in and then help you. Or there are like also voice bots where similar scenario, you would have these IVR calls, interactive voice response calls, where you're talking to a voice bot on the other side, and again it needs to follow a specific format. And if you ask something which is not outside the defined scope of questions which is it is already trained with, it doesn't have the ability to handle that or respond to that. And that was the experience. And now all of a sudden, especially with the launch of GPT and chat GPT, which most of us are familiar with, we have now these bots being replaced with generative AI based agents, where we have seen very good results. So for example, I have a couple of examples on the slide. The first one is H&M using replacing their customer support boards with a generative AI agent, which helps them to reduce the response time by almost 70%. So which essentially means that there is no wait time between the first bot interaction and then having to rely on a human agent for the support query to be resolved. The AI agents are able to resolve 70% of the queries on their own. And then similarly with the example of ClickUp, where it's an all-in-one productivity tool, where again 50% of their customers interactions are resolved through their generative AI agent, compared to a more traditional chatbot. So these are all examples which probably, the reason I use customer service as an example is because these are probably experiences which all of you have experienced in the last few months, when we moved from the era of more rule-based chatbots to more intelligent generative AI driven agents. And that's essentially what we are trying to usher in to the world of proctoring.
Okay, so it's not just a chatbot; it's more than a chatbot, and understand it's more than just the malpractice solution that you've already had. So, what is it that you're launching now exactly?
Yeah, so the difference between chatbots and also AI agents, and in many ways, what automated proctoring was and the proctoring AI agents are, is that chatbots, like I mentioned, they're limited to answering questions and providing information. They're mostly trained using predefined rules and decision trees, so they cannot operate outside the defined constraints. So if you have any unscripted questions or anything which is outside what the bot is already trained on, they cannot handle those unscripted questions. So they typically are used like a top of the funnel solution to basically triage the customer queries. In the case of customer support, as an example, it's used to triage at the top of the funnel, and then if there are simple queries which the bot can handle, it will be able to resolve. But if these are more complex queries, and which is what most of the queries are, if it's very straightforward, you probably wouldn't even reach out to the customer service team in the first place. But if it requires more nuanced decision making or more personalized support, these chatbots were not able to provide. And that's where AI agents come in. And I think ChatGPT is probably something which I assume many of the listeners are familiar with, where essentially you have many people call it super intelligent, many people call it having an ability to appear as a human. So essentially, it can perform more complex tasks. It uses the large language model technology, which is the latest in or the cutting edge aspect of artificial intelligence today, where it has the ability to reason, it has the ability to understand the context and provide intelligent responses, not just relying on a previously generated script. So it can understand what the user is trying to achieve, even if it's not part of the previously scripted or trained question sets, and also make use any information available at its perusal, whether it's customer service guides or videos or other previous support request records, any of that. Use that to provide more intelligent response. So essentially, it solves. It is more independent. It can solve for most of the customer service queries on its own, without having to rely on a human agent at the back end after the initial top of the funnel screening.
Okay. So I'd be really interested to hear, because I'm sure I'm not the only one listening to that thinking that sounds great, but I'm sure that there are reservations around AI proctoring and AI agents. So if I'd love to hear what people's reservations are, and we can try and address some of those in the Q&A afterwards. That'd be great. So your proctoring agent's got a name, haven't they? Alvi, which is quite a nice move to bridge the gap between that kind of human and AI interface, and I guess help to reduce the stress of candidates as well. But what does that actually look like for the student and for the proctor?
Yeah, so very similar to the customer service example which we just discussed. We had in the traditional remote proctoring world, we had what we call automated proctoring, which was similar to recorded chatbots in the customer service use case, where it could only look for very specific events which the candidate would do, like we spoke about, not being in front of the camera or using a phone. The traditional automated proctoring was primarily around checking for a very well defined set of activities, and if it doesn't fall into these set of activities, then the automated proctoring cannot handle that. So, for example, candidates always come up with new means of violating the test rules, which obviously a human proctor, when they look at the video feed, they can infer that the candidate is trying to, whether by covering their mouth and trying to read out the questions, or somebody else can teleprompt them with answers, or whether they're using a Bluetooth earphone. There are very nuanced gestures and aspects which a human proctor can understand, but the traditional automated proctoring was not able to understand. But that's only one part of the story. The other aspect is that candidates also, when you're using automated proctoring in the traditional sense, candidates were not receiving any support. These bots were created specifically for the purpose of monitoring. So they can only do that. They can look at the video feed or the screen feed and then only look for infractions and then flag those infractions. And we can talk more about flags later. But essentially, that's all these bots were able to do. What an AI proctoring agent does is bring the same power of generative AI, which we discussed in the customer service use case, the large language models, to remote proctoring, where these models have human-like vision capability. So it can perceive a video feed or a screen feed just the way you and I can. It can look for all the nuances on what the individual in front of in front of them is trying to do. Are they stuck somewhere? Do they need help? If they need help, they can converse with these candidates and provide them help. If the candidate is trying to violate any of the test rules, even if it is not like a very well predefined method. They can understand what they're trying to do and warn them, block them. So anything which a human proctor would do, they can do this in a very similar fashion because they have human-like vision and conversation capabilities, which is what sets a AI agent apart from what traditionally automated proctoring has been. So some of the benefits of this approach, which you have seen with already. So we launched Alvi around 3 months back with some of our early beta customers taking it to production, and we have seen very promising and encouraging results from how Alvi has been used by our customers in production so far. We've seen that just in terms of monitoring, it can detect 8 times more number of suspicious flags than a traditional automated proctoring method. So what that means is if a particular session is being run, and in the traditional proctoring method, probably it would only understand a few different types of infractions, and as a result, you can't really use it for high stake exams. It's more used for low and medium stake exams where you want some basic checks to be in place, but then beyond those basic checks, the candidate might be able to still violate the rules, copy the questions, or take external help. Most of those, if not all, are eliminated because the Alvi or the AI agent can detect all the more flags. The second advantage is agents can also manage the entire exam session without any human intervention. So what that means is right from onboarding the candidate, guiding them through the onboarding process in a conversation. Primarily chat driven today, but we believe we will soon be able to also add audio or verbal communication as well. But in a primarily chat based interaction, the agent is able to help the test taker go through the entire process of onboarding, answer any queries they might have, and then once they are in the exam, continuously monitor them. And if there are any flags, warn the candidate. If the candidate has any kind of justification for why they appear to be like floating a rule, they can inform the agent. The agent can take that into consideration and make necessary changes in how the flags were created. And then from a flag accuracy standpoint, we have till date seen almost 98% flag accuracy, which what that means is every session which we have audited by where a human proctor has thoroughly reviewed this. Sometimes in these cases, the multiple human proctors have reviewed the session, and we saw that there are less than 2% of instances where the AI agent or Alvi has missed a particular activity or had generated a false positive. So that's 2% is a very low error rate. Typically, human proctors have much higher error rate when it comes to remote proctoring because they are all monitoring multiple test takers at the same time, and they have to look at multiple feeds, the camera feed, the screen feed, listen to the audio, all of that. So they tend to miss things once in a while, but the agent has been seen to be very consistent from a performance standpoint. And then obviously they can also monitor large cohorts of candidates. There is no concurrency limitations. There is no need to train a new proctor if you have additional load. Agents can scale or kind of theoretically in an unlimited fashion, which allows us to take up a lot more load from an exam volume of exam standpoint and 24/7. So you don't have any specific restrictions. So these are some of the benefits which we have seen so far.
Yeah, we had a question in saying, how does this solution handle situations where test takers in a large room with 200 plus other students simultaneously? So from what you're saying, it sounds like it can very well deal with that kind of number of candidates.
So today, Alvi is primarily trained to proctor in a remote proctoring setting, which what that means is each of these test takers are in different locations with their video and screen feed streaming into the environment where Alvi monitors it. It doesn't is not currently tested in a classroom setting where you have, let's say, a CCTV surveillance camera or something like that, monitoring the test takers, all of them in a single room, and trying to proctor those exams. We haven't tested that use case yet, but based on our current understanding of the vision capability of Alvi as an agent, I don't think it would be a very impossible. I think with further training and focus on that particular use case, we might be able to support that use case as well. So one of the other things which I wanted to talk about, because I spoke about flags and how AI proctoring works in some of the previous slides, but oftentimes I've seen that uh, in people have listeners have questions about what are these flags, how does flagging happen in a proctored session. So when I refer to flags, these are basically alerts raised based on initial activity which is detected by the system during an ongoing exam. And when it comes to AI proctoring, it's not like one blanket rule applies for all kind of exams. As the customer use cases vary, some of you have open book exams, some of you have closed book exams, some of you allow candidates to bring in certain um, like artifacts, whether it's a book or a calculator or some or in anything else, or in some cases you might have special accommodation requests. So any of that can also be configured, just like how you can instruct a human proctor that okay, these are allowed and these are not allowed. You can also configure those rules on the system. So essentially the system would understand what rules are allowed, what materials are allowed, what behaviors are allowed and what are not allowed based on these configurations. And then every time a rule is violated, then it would basically notify the test taker by issuing a warning, and also log in that in the record or the test record. So that's what we refer to flags. These flags essentially so this is an example of an image where how the warning is issued to the test taker, in this case saying that mobile like object detected, please make sure that you're not using the mobile phone, and on the right hand side you can see how the those flags are recorded. So essentially these are the flags which you would see when you are going back into a playback view to see the test record for an investigation later. So this is what I was referring to as flags. So what essentially happens in the case of Alvi is that instead of a human proctor warning the candidate or recording these flags, it is all done by the agent themselves. So that's essentially what I was referring to flags when in some of the previous slides. Just want to clarify that.
Yeah, thanks for explaining that. I imagine if I was sitting in an exam and I kept seeing these red flags pop up, that would make me quite stressed, I think. So I suppose one of the things that that would be really important is how we prepare students for working with the system, and addressing that stress point of lack of familiarity with what the online format looks like. It reminds me of some research that RM did earlier this year, where candidates told us that they do really value that ability to see the technology before they sit the exam for real. And then it was further backed up with a webinar that we did with the Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply around the candidate experience. So, Eleanor, I'd love to get a poll going about what people do to prepare students. And if there's anything that comes up that isn't in the poll, we can drop it in the chat and make sure that we cover it later. Have we got a poll that we can... Perfect. You're so good, Eleanor. Thank you.
It's not me. We've got other people running each round as well. It's brilliant. I don't have to do much. So we do have this poll that's come up. Is what do you do to prepare your students for digital assessment? So I know there are a number of ways that different organisations do this, and not everybody has the luxury of having hands-on access to tools. But there's some other brilliant ways of doing things around videos and written material. Some people don't do anything at all, and some people have other ways that they're doing things. So I'd love it if you've got another way to just drop that into the chat box for us so that we can see that.
So
But yeah, sorry, go ahead. You go.
I just thought while everyone is doing the polls, I can also probably show a quick video. I've been speaking about Alvi for so long, but show a quick video of Alvi, how it really happens in real time during an exam. So let me just play this video. I hope it plays properly. Yeah, great. So this is like an exam environment where a test taker is going through an exam. In this case, I've used dummy images, but essentially what Alvi does is, so you can see here, talk to Proctor, there's a chat interface which is open. So every time Alvi sees something which is not in line with the test rules, it would actually pop up just like you are seeing here. This is an actual session. I just replaced the team just replaced the video preview here, but essentially it would warn the candidate saying that, hey, only the test taker is expected to be present during the exam. So if you're violating that rule, you might get flagged. And it also it basically can monitor a wide range of infractions using of smartphones, earphones, covering your mouth. So, but the difference between a traditional AI proctoring and a AI agent, there are two things. One is the agent understands the context, so it is not like a candidate randomly covering their face, because that was like a natural behavior they have when they're trying to think. It wouldn't flag that, but only if they see that, okay, it's a specific pattern, because every time a new question pops up, the candidate is trying to cover their face. Or if the candidate has a specific rebuttal or a explanation for a specific behavior, they can also chat with Alvi, so they can let Alvi know that, okay, this was an unexpected call in this case. So that, and not really me trying to cheat the system, but essentially what that does is it would log that, and then if the candidate doesn't repeat that behavior, it wouldn't flag the candidate. Compared to in a traditional automated proctoring or AI proctoring, you would have that flag, and then the candidate would be flagged for that session, and then somebody needs to go in and then review the entire session and make that decision. So that's the advantage of having a AI agent compared to more traditional AI proctoring.
I've got the results of that poll now as well. If I just want to share those results with you. So brilliantly, most people are doing a number of ways to prepare their students. So most people are getting their students to have hands-on access using videos and written materials. So that's great. So yeah, back to you guys. Carry on with your chat.
Wonderful. I'm just trying to figure out how to move to the next slide. With videos are always tricky.
It's always a risky move.
Okay, great.
Yeah, that's the poll that we've just done.
Yeah. So I think this is an important aspect which we just discussed about how do we prepare students in advance. There are a lot of best practices which we advise our customers on when it comes to preparing test takers for their exam. So right from sending a detailed test taker guide so that candidates know what to expect and how to prepare for the exams, sharing practice tests. So all of the test takers who ever take a proctored exam on Talview, they can always come to and we have a test taker guide which is hosted in as a web page with a lot of information available in a very structured manner. So we allow them to take a practice test ahead of the exam, get familiarized with the process, the environment, all of that. There are very detailed guidelines and also system checks available for them to see if they're meeting the system requirements, whether the browser is up to date, the operating system meets the requirement, the internet speed. So all of those things are available. They can test their systems if they do while they're whether they're doing the practice test or doing the system check. They can always reach out to our technical support team if they come across any issues where they're not able to resolve or using the guides available. They get real time support or which will allow them to navigate through those issues and ensure that they have the optimal test taker experience. And then there are a lot of do's and don'ts. Sometimes test takers, while we do have instructions being shared with the candidates, they often not everybody reads through the instructions in detail. So there are like ready reckoners or like short list of do's and don'ts which they can do a quick review of, even if they have not read the instructions, which ensures that they don't have they don't run into these issues when they're doing the exam. So this is a sample of test taker guide. I just wanted to pull it up because oftentimes we have had users asking how it would look like, what's like how an ideal page is structured. So you can see every aspect is made available to them in a very easy to read manner, which ensures that okay, it's very unlikely that somebody who it goes to them in the email when they register for an exam or when they when the administrators invite them for an exam. It is also they are also prompted to visit this page when they at the start of the exam. So this ensures that okay, they are sufficiently prepared, and the support is very important. So if they have any questions, they can reach out to our technical support and get those resolved before they actually venture into the exam itself.
Brilliant. So, just wanted to pick up on an interesting point that's popped up in the chat. So we were asking about some of the reservations that people might have had, and I think there's two that are kind of related here. One was around how AI deals with slang when candidates are interacting with the proctor. And the way that people use language. And then I think this is a related point as well around how you can scale up global rollouts because of the level of support across different languages. So can you talk a little bit about that, please, Sanjo?
Yeah. So the large language models which power the AI agents, they are powerful to understand all the context or nuances, whether it's a slang, whether it's a you might use different words in different context. So in the context, they would know that these questions are from the context of an exam, and this is why this question is being asked. So all of those, unlike the traditional customer support boards or automated proctoring, agents has an understanding of the nuance, and they are able to make use of that to ensure that they are providing more accurate responses. And then there is also the agent. You can also configure the agent in different languages. So in fact, many of the listeners might be familiar. You can use ChatGPT, for example, for translation. So if you we have some of our customer success teams, when they have customers who speak a different language, using the ChatGPT kind of AI agent to actually do a real time translation of what of language when they speak with these customers. So in a similar fashion, the agent can also handle multiple languages. So the candidate doesn't have to stick to a specific language. while conversing with the agent, and then you can also configure those. So you can say that, okay, the agent, this like particular test takers is going to their primary language is Spanish, so the default language you can configure as a particular language.
Okay, so what would happen then if the internet was to drop out, for example? So we can continue to serve the exam, but would we have to stop the proctor if it wasn't available to monitor?
Yeah, so in the case of internet disconnection, obviously, if the agent loses access to the feeds, which is the video feed, the screen feed, which it uses for proctoring, and also the communication channel with the test taker, then it would wait for the test taker to reconnect. These are typically defined by the test tools. Many of our customers have exams where the test taker has with buffer limited amount of time available for them to complete exam. If they're able to reconnect within that buffer period, so let's say it's a 60-minute exam, and then the total time including the buffer is 90 minutes. So some time is already spent on onboarding, but let's say they're still within the 90 minutes buffer. Then if they reconnect, then the agent will just ask them to do the environment test or some of those onboarding checks again, just to ensure that nothing has changed in their environment at time, and then would allow them to continue with the exam from where they started. So it would still remember all the context of what had happened before. So if there are like specific aspects which were discussed with the candidate about something about their environment or something, some past conversation, agent would continue to have that context, and it can continue to proctor the exam from there.
Okay, that's great to hear. And then another thing that we hear a lot is how people will cope with the stress of being continuously monitored. Could you talk a little bit about how you deal with that?
Yeah, I think our experience with even AI proctoring or more traditional automated proctoring, and obviously with AI agents, has been it has been always had a positive impact to stress. I think a lot of candidates who have I would stress related to remote proctoring is because they are interacting with a stranger who is sometimes on video and then looking into their private space over video. So that adds to a lot of the stress involved with remote proctoring. But compared to that, having an AI agent which doesn't have any stated purpose or intent, and it's neutral, and that experience often has been cited as a lot less intrusive experience. If you're interacting with another machine and not with another human being, that definitely many candidates have reported that takes away a lot of the stress. The other aspect, compared to traditional AI proctoring, where there is no support available for the test takers during the exam, unlike a human proctoring, with an AI agent, they get continuous support. So in fact, agents are known to be even more empathetic. They don't lose calm even if they have to go through the same, let's say, troubleshooting step multiple times or things like that. There are so from that standpoint, the agents are already reported to have a more calming experience on the test takers' experience when they go through the process. Added to that is the fact that a higher accuracy, lesser number of flags, so false positive flags especially. So the candidate is not distracted by false positive flags or false alerts. Higher consistency in which by which they monitor the exams. All of that also helps from a stress reduction standpoint. And one other important aspect is if a human proctor, they are monitoring multiple candidates. If a candidate reaches out to the human proctor, then the human proctor, obviously there is a limit to how much they can multitask. So they would need to finish with one candidate or some particular item before they get to the new candidate. But with an AI agent, there is no such limitation. Every question, every response would get a real-time reply, which mean that also reduces the stress. Oftentimes, candidate gets stressed out if the human proctor would take longer time to get back to them. And even in the case of unexpected issues, agents have seen to be Alvi especially have seen to be more effective with sticking to the best practices and all of those aspects.
Okay, and I just wanted to pick up on one of those points around the false flags. So I'm thinking around some kind of natural mannerisms that people might have around, looking up at the ceiling or talking out loud. Can you explain a little bit around how you deal with those false cheating alerts?
Yeah, I think there are the way we have designed Alvi, it's a inclusive solution where we have already thought through most of the I would say special accommodation requires specific behaviors which candidate might their mannerisms or specific body language which traditionally would have led to a false alert. We have thought through a lot of those things, and Alvi is already trained to handle all of those aspects, so it can understand the special requests which are made as a part of the exam. For example, having somebody to assist the candidate in the exam room in as a special accommodation, or giving them additional time, or using like a fidget toy. Those are all accommodations which Alvi can understand and accommodate based on special requests. And it is also trained to look at like specific, even if it's not an accommodation request, but specific behaviors or body language which we have seen across test takers, which often leads to false positive. Those are also the Alvi has the ability to understand that and accommodate it accordingly.
And we talked earlier, didn't we, about you can turn those flags off for certain exams. For example, if they're allowed to use a notebook or a textbook or something.
Yeah. So everything is kind of configurable. The beauty of this is with human proctors, there's a limit to the more complexity you bring in terms of rules, the more challenging it is to train the proctor and also ensure that the error rate is minimized. But with an agent, you can dictate rules and then it would follow the rules by line. So essentially, it's a lot more scalable from that standpoint. You can have more variations to exams, and so you don't have to modify your exam or the test taker behavior to fit to the predefined standard operating procedure. There's a lot more flexibility available here.
Great. And I wanted to go back to a couple of the other points that we had earlier. So we had a few people asking about different ways that AI can support them as an organisation, and one of the key ones was global growth. So how do you see Alvi helping with that?
Yeah, so I think Alvi has immense potential from that standpoint. One important aspect is cost. Oftentimes, when you're relying on human proctoring, the fact that human service is involved, there is the cost increases. But with Alvi, you get a human proctor like experience with many other advantages as well at a lower cost. So that makes it more scalable. Second is it doesn't have any language based barriers or any other barriers. So essentially, it can understand any language. It can converse with candidates in any language. So no language based barriers. There are no resource constraints as such. You don't need to, no matter how large the human proctor pool is, with sudden spikes, it might be difficult to handle that. So with Alvi, we don't have those restrictions. It can scale unlimited theoretically and essentially accommodate a much wider scale and operate 24/7 and all of those advantages as well.
Right, guys, we're coming up to the end of our time now. I might have to cut you a little bit short. Luckily, we were quite close to the end of our content, so I think we've done really well just in terms of kind of wrapping up. We've talked quite a lot about the candidate experience around stress and how it's kind of helping people to move into that place. I think we answered quite a lot of the questions, actually. We did quite well in the content. There are a few. You just asked the one that how does this work with like open book exams? Do you have to set rules prior to the exam? We've kind of said everything's sort of configurable. We've talked a lot about the number of test candidates you can have. So I think there's a few people we just want to follow up with just to take a look at kind of what kind of volume they're looking at to do and to get a solution in with that. I think we just have a slide that just has got email addresses on there if people wanted to catch up with us. Just to say that if you did want to hear more about this, that you can speak to either RM or you can speak to Talview about it. It doesn't really matter who you contact, because we'll share with each other in terms of supporting each other with who we're talking to. We'll pass that between ourselves. We'll align between ourselves about just making sure that you're getting the support you need. So it doesn't matter who you contact. We'll find the right person to help you out with that. And that's not just from this webinar. That's if you're working with us. And there's certain levels of support between the two of us where it just creates a kind of a streamlined partnership between the two of us. In terms of some of the questions that we did have, someone was asking whether the AI agent can help check the candidate system.
Yeah. So AI agent can do it can monitor the candidate system or check the candidate system. It can look at the taskbar, understand if there are any applications which are not supposed to run as a part of the exam. In the taskbar, it can check for pop-up notifications if at all something like that comes up during the exam. It can also check if an external monitor is connected. So most of the checks or all of the checks which a human proctor could do by accessing the candidate machine. AI agent also has similar capabilities and without requiring some of those additional permissions a human proctor would need.
And you did mention this actually. You can tell the proctor why you did the thing that got you flagged. So does this stop the flag from happening if you tell the agent what it is that's going on?
Yeah. So there are, let's say, two kind of use cases. One, for example, it's a one-off incident like a candidate getting distracted because let's say a kid ran into the room. Maybe the kid was not visible in the video, but the candidate informs the agent that that's the reason. If it doesn't repeat, then the agent would take that into consideration just like how a human proctor would and then can accommodate that as long as it's in line with the test rules prescribed by the customer. In a similar fashion, there are also false positives because let's say there's a photograph behind the wall and while we have instructions for candidates to remove that, but sometimes it might basically the candidate might not be able to remove that ahead of time. Now if it's the system, the agent wants the candidate and then the candidate is saying that okay I cannot remove it, and then if it is in line with the test rules approved by the customer, then we can just note it, and instead of keeping on warning the candidate saying that okay, there's an image in the background, it will start to ignore it and then note it just once, and then it's then that can be used for the further review.
Brilliant. All right, one last question. I think we've got time for this one. Very quickly, can it cope with some students having different time extensions? Yeah,
so like I mentioned, the beauty of an agent is you can have rules defined to even an n equal to 1 level. Each individual test takers also can have customized rules. As long as so there's an interface where you can go in and define these rules, or there are also the LMS integrations which we have support some of this rule making. It gives a lot of flexibility from that standpoint. So you can have different exam lengths or different accommodations at an individual candidate level or a group of student level.
Brilliant. That has taken us perfectly to time. So thank you very much, both of you, for joining us today. As I said, we'll follow up with a copy of the slides and a recording of this session and catch up with any questions that we didn't get around to today. So thank you very much for everyone joining us, and thank you to Sanjo and Anna.
Thank you for listening. Stay tuned for more insightful content on Gen AI-powered interviewing and remote proctoring.